Right. So last session we discussed about working with transitions. How do we deal with the transitions? And 2D, 3D transforms, some basic points. Next, after understanding that, one more option in the transition. Yesterday we learned about timing functions, how to deal with the timing functions, right? We will see about. Actually, the transition 3D related some options we learned. So that is transition delay, transition duration, transition properties, how we can affect them. These are the options. Actually, transition related option. So we have one more important is first, transition is shorthand way. It is to apply all of them. And delay so indicates how much time it has to take to start or end animation. Duration is the complete time to finish the transformation. And transition property is nothing but it defines which property to affect, so that in the transformation only those properties are affected. And another option, we have transition timing function. Actually, transition timing function. The purpose of transition timing function is nothing but the main purpose is it provides predefined effects. It provides predefined effects. So what is the advantage is you don't need to write the effects. You just apply a function. It will change the animation style of transition. For example, suppose yesterday what we done is we designed some animation where we can change the position of object and keep it on the screen for some duration. So delay timing here. So yesterday we designed one example in this way. Here, different objects needs different effects. In the left panel, so I move the mouse onto the first box and it opens that content. And I remove and it will be back. The same timing is not maintained for others. For every content, we have defined different timing. So for last one, I given more timing. How it have to introduce, how it have to go. We have to write a lot of effects there. So to do that, actually what we done is we return the predefined options. We return the predefined options. Predefined options is nothing but, so means we return transition delay, we return transition duration, and we are changing this delay and duration for every hover and leave like options. We are managing them. Now we have some predefined effects ready-made. You can use those predefined effects. That means actually the transition timing function, so we'll provide a set of CSS functions, so which will control the animation using predefined effect, using predefined effects. That means they have predefined values. They are configured with predefined values for animation, and those values are applied to content. That is what actually transition timing function. You have so many transition timing functions. So what are the transition timing functions and how to deal with the transition timing function? So generally the transition timing function is nothing but means how you configure transition timing function. So let's see, suppose we are means what timing functions actually it is having. It is having timing functions, the various timing functions are, we have the timing functions like is in one function, and we have a linear function. We have is in function. We have is out function, is out. We have is in out option. We have a cubic visor, visor. So we have steps. We have jump start. We have jump end. We have jump none. We have jump both. We have start. We have end. We have step start. We have step end. These are all the predefined options. So if I give one, others you can try. The point is very simple. That means if I give is, what will happen? Is nothing but the default value increases in velocity towards the middle. It will increase the velocity towards the middle of the transition and slow down towards end. That is ease effect. If I give this ease effect, from the starting it increases the speed. When it goes to the middle, up to the middle, the speed increases. Then again from the middle to back end, it will decrease the speed. We call this as ease effect. If I give linear, that means it starts off slowly. So with the transition speed increasing, with the transition speed increasing, with the transition speed increasing, are not increasing, you can say that linear means with the transition speed is even, with the transition speed even from begin to end, with the same speed. How it starts, it will end. So ease in is nothing but what will happen is, so it starts off slowly. So actually linear will be from standard, its speed is even actually from begin to end. This ease in starts slowly and it will increase towards the end. Ease out means it starts quickly and slow down continuously. Like this, these are all ready-made effects. Every effect have different combinations, ready-made, predefined. You can apply one after another and you can see, just like if you know, suppose if you know PowerPoint. Suppose in PowerPoint, I want to give an effect. In the PowerPoint, I want to give an effect for any text or any object. Suppose we have an object. I want to give an effect. So when I want to give an effect for this, that means for this, means we want to set some animation. We have ready-made animations, transitions, animations. We can give ready-made animations. So technically, I go to the animation. You see ready-made effects are there. In this, you can observe the effects like float, appear, random bars, different options will be there. We can add animation. So I will go to more entrance effects. You can see that here we have ready-made effects. When you are selecting the effects, now what happens is this object, suppose I selected fly in, then it will be like this. If I select like wheel, then it will be like this. So if I select like box, then it will be like, these are predefined effects actually, transitions. Such ready-made effects are present, which you can add. The effects for introducing, effects for starting, ending, we don't need to write, so it will be automatically applied. Such ready-made options are there for CSS also. You need to just apply them. And it will affect accordingly. It will technically affect accordingly. So for example, I will give you a simple example for that. Means how it can manage that. That means how we can configure such ready-made effects and define. So let's go to, So we will create one option here. So design for you can apply all of them one after another and you can try. Initially, I am giving you a simple option of how to set those effects. Let's go into this and create a new file, timing function. Okay. And let's create a HTML document. Doc type HTML, and head, right? And HTML close. Okay. And so in the body, okay. And here we are configuring, yeah. So we are defining so simple effect for this. Just we will keep it div. We'll keep it div. And I will keep an ID as is in, something like this, is in. And here, so we will add some style for the div. So wherever the div is present, so width is 100 and the height is 100 and background color as red. Okay. And transition, it will be applying width and 2 seconds. Transition is applying the width in 2 seconds. Next, shorthand way we are using. I will go to the div on hover. So div on hover width is some 400 pixel, 100 to 400 pixel. Now for the div, I am giving hash is in. And here, so we are defining an option. So how the option is, we are configuring transition timing function. And you see ready-made transition timing functions are there. I kept the option is in, the transition timing function as is in. That's how we define the timing function. Now let's run this and see. So we are configuring this. I move the option there. It will be like this. I move out, then you can see it will be like this. It is not having an uniform. It will have some change in the effect. So suppose I defined the width as 800 pixels. Okay, on hover the width as 800 pixels. Now here I am not defining the transition seconds. I am not mentioning seconds. When I move on to it, then it will be fast. It will be fast in reaching. We need to understand the speed. So then transition. So 2 seconds. Okay. And you can see that now you can see there is the effect here. And what you will observe in this effect, you have to keenly observe the different effects actually. What are the different effects actually is when you are configuring them, the effects you will see there is when I move the mouse onto it. So it starts off with the speed. It catches up the speed in between and end. That is how actually the concept of linear. Suppose I am giving some other effects like, so the timing function is not is in. Suppose I said is out, I'm giving. When I'm giving is out and refresh here and move the mouse onto that, you can see it starts fast and ends slow. You can see that when I move the mouse onto it, it starts fast but ends slow. That is out effect. That is out effect. So suppose I given the effect like linear, the effect like linear from begin to end, it will have the same speed to continue, from begin to end. There will be no change in the speed from begin to end, Suppose I have given like steps. So suppose it should finish in 5 steps, and end effect I have given end. Then what happens is, so when I move the mouse onto it, it will be step by step increasing. And it is step by step decreasing. You can see step by step will come. That is a predefined. Transition timing. We can add so many things. We can say end. We can write like jump end. That means towards the end. Then you can see that it is moving and directly it gets the end. It will be immediate, fast, actually, right? So we don't want that. Then we can just give, so instead of steps, you can give all the other options like linear. So like ease in, out, we have the effects. Now that makes the effect, right? So that means starting slow, in between it will catch up the speed, and again ending slow. That is how it manages. These are all the predefined functions. So we can use these predefined functions and apply the effects for the content. So there are so many other animation effects which you can try by yourself. You can see the difference in the speed actually. Finally, all are reaching the transformation. Only the point is how they reach the end, how they start, how they behave in between. These are the which will actually change. That is what actually the intention of this timing function. So you can test all those timing functions, what I given to you, and you can try on them. So this is an example for timing function, how we can configure and define the timing functions. So these are predefined effects. We can use these predefined effects. Yeah. Now, one more important is when you are creating these animations, that means transitions, you can even define CSS animations. Actually, currently you have seen CSS transition. You can create CSS animation. This will be easy for you to understand. So because that is the main reason I given you a concept of Flash. I hope everyone attended the sessions of Flash. So we learned about how to use Flash software, how to create Flash animations, right? We learned about designing Flash. So working with the Flash. In Flash, we learned about animations, different types. So animation for different types. If you remembered, can you tell me how to create animation in Flash? Two types of animations are there. How to create animations for Flash? Remember that? Huh? How to create animations for Flash? Have you remembered? So what are the animation types we have? You remember them? Can you name them? What are the animations we have in Flash? No one remembers that. What are the animations we have learned in Flash? No? Yes? Huh. If you remember, we learned about frame by frame animation, twinning animations. Am I right? Huh? So we learned about frame by frame animations, twinning animations. How many types of frames are there? Remember that? How many types of frames that you can insert? Remember those? We have two types of frames to insert. What are those two frames? Remember? What are the two frames we can insert? Can you name them? We learned about frame by frame animation in Flash. You still remember that frames? Huh? So if you remembered, we learned about static frames, keyframes. You remember the word keyframes? Huh? Right? In Flash, we have designed that. So Flash is one software. So that we learned is one we learned. And so Flash software, we learned about animations, how to create animations for Flash, right? How do we create animations in Flash? If you remembered, we learned we can have an object. And if we want the object to move from one place to another place, we need to insert keyframes. We have to insert a keyframe. We need to insert keyframe. We have to create a motion tween. In between all the frames, it will automatically add. And wherever you want, you can add the frames. So we can add the frames and we can change the position. We can change the location of that particular object. And it finally moves in this direction. Already we learned this, how to create Flash animations. We discussed about that, if you remembered that. Now, CSS animations are used to animate. They are used to animate technically. They are used to animate CSS transitions. You can animate CSS transitions. So you can reduce the use of JavaScript for animations. So reduce the use of JavaScript and Flash for animation and Flash for animation. You don't need to even use. So what is the advantage? You remembered Flash requires a Flash player to run. What is advantage here is, so animation can easily run on low bandwidth devices also. Bandwidth devices. That means the devices that doesn't have more bandwidth, like even mobiles. Because mobile compact browsers don't have Flash players and all like things. So animations, another important is animations will work even even when JavaScript is disabled, even when JavaScript is disabled, because if you write animations in JavaScript, if JavaScript is disabled, it cannot work. Even when JavaScript is disabled, or Flash plugin is not available, or Flash plugin is not available. So animations will work. And to create animation sequence, so to create animation sequence in CSS, we need some important options. What are those? In CSS, we need at the net keyframes. We need keyframes. And this is not a new word for us because already we learned it. We learned about keyframes in Flash. So what is a frame? How frames are designed? What is the intention of the frames to design? All these I told you in Flash animations. So here we will use keyframe with animation. So we have animation. So we have animation name. So we have animation duration. We have animation timing function. We have animation delay. These are same like transition options. We have animation iteration count. We have animation direction. Also we can define. We have animation fill mode. We have a fill mode. We have animation play state. These are all the animation options provided by this. Now, how to create animations actually? We have to create animations by using the concept of keyframes. So by using keyframes. To create animation, we need these keyframes. This is the key point for creating animation, keyframe. And you know that generally you learned in Flash. So keyframe is used to configure every frame in animation. Every frame in animation. You know that. It is used to configure every frame in animation. At each frame, at each keyframe, right? At each keyframe, we define effect. At each keyframe, we define effect for object. That already we done in our Flash. So, and you know that keyframes are defined with initial, final, and intermediate steps. Defined with intermediate steps. So these are the key things you need to remember. That is how we actually used it. That is how we actually used the general Flash also. So when we used Flash, so Flash also works with the same mechanism actually. So here we have an object, okay, and we need to move this object from one location to another. Then we learned the same technique actually. So we have to configure every keyframe in animation. At each keyframe, we define effect for object. That means first keyframe is at 15. Okay, so first frame, how object should look like. Suppose it is here. At 15 frame, we have to move this object here. Okay, at 30 frame, we have inserted a keyframe. At 30 frame, we have to resize this. Or we can do any effect. That means how we dash. At each frame, we define effect for object. Now we have keyframes defined with initial state, final state. So actually, initial is first frame and final is 30 frame. The 15 is intermediate. What I can do is at 25, I can, or 25 or 26, I can add one more intermediate frame. In that intermediate frame, I can change some more so stretch like options, something. I can change some more effect. Now this animation looks in this way. That animation looks in this way. That animation looks in this way. That is how we create keyframes and animations in Flash. And if you attended our Flash class sessions, so in our regular UI session, so this is very simple and easy thing, nothing complicated. Only just you have to learn how to write the syntax, because already we know the keyframes and their importance. How do we write is, we use the basic syntax. So keyframes, and keyframes will have an identifier name. Identifier name. They will have an identifier name. So here we need to configure the effects from effects. We have to define the from effects. From contains effects for initial state. It contains the effects for initial state. Initial state. And we have two. Two contains the effects for final state. Final state. So that is how we define. So we have an identifier. So we have keyframes, we have an identifier, and we have from two options defined. We can add, so we can add, generally we can configure the intermediate effects. Intermediate effects are nothing but, so suppose we can write like this. We can define keyframes and identifier. And here we can write the intermediate options. Intermediate is nothing but just like our Flash. At 10, at 0%, at 0%, what effects it should have? The effects. Similarly, at 40%, what effects it should have? Effects. That means at 0 frame, at 10 frame, at 20 frame, like that. At 80%, what effects it should have? We need to write in this way. And at 100%, what effects it should have? Effects it should have. We need to configure in this way. We need to define in this way. This is how we create the frames. Just like how you design Flash. Keyframes are designed separately and applied to any object by using, actually keyframes are defined separately. You should note that point is keyframes are defined separately and applied to any object by using the attribute. By using the attribute, we have the attribute, that is animation name. We have to use animation name attribute. That means syntactically, how do we define that? We have to configure an element. That means we have an element. Paragraph is an element. For paragraph element, animation name, we have to define the key identifier name, the keyframe identifier name, the keyframe identifier name. So we have to define keyframe identifier name. So then paragraph will use that keyframes it will use. That is how we need to configure. Let's create one simple animation effect and see how we can use this keyframe. So just a simple option how we can create. I'm just using, so this example I given already. Okay. Now here I will make some changes. So what we will do is just we will write a div, and it is just a class container. And here we are defining CSS animations, some heading. Okay, so here I will give some effects for container. I'm defining the effect for the container. So the basic effect for container is container overflow. We will keep as hidden, because anything should not go outside. It should be hidden. Overflow is hidden. Okay, we are building the keyframes, at the net keyframes, and it requires an identifier. I will give any identifier, slide in, that is identifier. You can give any name. And from, okay, what should be the effect, starting effect? From margin left. So left margin 100%. From left margin 100%. And width 300%. 300%. Right, that is how it has to define. So, and that is starting with left margin 100% means completely right side, outside. And width, you have defined just 300%. Okay, so we have defined that 300%. So we can write any effect according to our requirement. So, or you can use, instead of that, you can use all your transition. Like we say transform. I can write scale, rotate, anything, some three. You can write anything. And what should be the two? Two is nothing but, so margin left should be 0%. 0% means complete left. And transform scale is 1, normal. So this is the keyframes. That means margin left side from 100% and 3 level size. It will come to margin left complete 0%, and it will transform the size to normal. That is how we have to define. Now I need to apply this to heading. These are keyframes. You design keyframes in this way. Now these keyframes we have to apply for heading. That means for heading 2, any selector you can use for heading 2. So which animation it has to use? Animation name. It should use the animation name called, what is the animation name? Slide in. It should use the animation name slide in. That is the keyframe, whatever the name you have given for that. And how much duration it should be? Animation duration, delay, all these are common. You can use duration 5 seconds. 5 seconds the animation duration. Now see what will happen here. When we run this, you can observe here, when we run this, the object will come from that size and it will set it here. That means once you refresh, you can see that from 300% to normal. That means 100% left margin means completely from right. Completely from right, it is coming here and it is displaying here. Completely from right, it is coming and displaying here. You can apply for any content. So that means suppose I given this, for inside this, I given a paragraph. So I kept some paragraph. I'm copying some paragraph. Okay. So this is the paragraph and set the paragraph there. So I set the paragraph there. Okay. And here we are defining. So we set the paragraph here. And here we are giving that effect to the paragraph. Now, when I give the paragraph, and you can see now, so it will be like this. So refresh, that means the paragraph will be displayed in this way. The paragraph will be displayed in this way. From that right side to left side, it will move. It depends on how you given your effect. You can use all your various skills of effects to define. Right? Initially, I just given some transform, scale, this. You can use rotate. So rotate right to left from 180 degrees to, it has to come to 0 degree. So you can use all your effects. Just you need to know how to define. I can bring from outside to the page, from page to outside, we can change. So we can give for any kind of content here. Suppose I given a heading, CSS animations. And for heading, I'm just giving that effect. And it will work for that particular heading. That is the basic example of how to configure the keyframe. How you define the keyframes. Just like what you have done in the Flash. Actually, you can add frames. You can add frames in between the start, in between. You can start in between the start and end, start and end by using step percentage. You can add by using step percentage. That means, for example, suppose what we have done is we are configuring the effect in this way. So what we are doing is initially, so margin left, from margin left 100%. And some here I changed that to width as 300%. Okay. And when it reaches to 2 will be, finally it will be width as some 100%. Okay. But when it reaches 75%, that means in between from and to, I can write 75%. At 75%, so I will give font size as 300% at 300%, and margin left will be 25%, and width will be some 150%. That means at 75% of animation, it will give this option. At 75%, it will give this one. At 75%, it will get this and display, usually. Now, when I run this, you can see that means in between I am adding. In between, we are configuring that. So you can add any paragraph and you can keep the paragraph. Actually, for text, it will be like this. You can see it will come at 75%. It will be like this. That means it will give you up to 75% and rest 25%, it will be like this. So gradually it is displaying the effect and it is hiding. Means it is reducing to normal. So we can add for any content. So I'm just adding for that heading. So for an image, for any content, you can define that. So that means here, suppose we are configuring this. So into an image. Source is, it is from images. So some shoe.jpg, shoe.jpg. We are defining that. And I want this to define for shoe. So that is image, sorry, image, right? I need to define for the image, the effect. And you can see that. So it will get that and it will display. But the image height and width is required. So that means image. So width is suppose 100 pixel and height is also 100 pixel. That is the basic image height and width. Then it will be in this way. It will getting that and it will be displaying, right? Because our animation also should suit that. You can keep for any content. We can add for any content, right? That is anything you can configure. So here we return for heading. So some CSS animations and we are applying for that. And we are configuring for that heading. So different elements will have to have different animation according to their size, according to the requirement. So here one more important option is that actually what is happening is this effect is working, coming, and it is stopped. Only one time it is running. What you can do is we can define that. That means this is in between how to add. So this is an example. So how we can add the frames intermediate, how we can configure and add the intermediate frames, how you can define the intermediate frames, right? So you can add so many intermediate frames. In every intermediate frame, you can define an effect, right? You can control the iteration. So you can control the iteration count. So which is the number of times time to define and number of times to show animation. So that you can define. That means here what you can do is we can add a property here for the heading animation iteration count. We will define as infinite. Suppose I said some 3 or some 2, I am defining like this iteration count. That means, so this is first time and this is the second time. It is coming 2 times and it stops. I will refresh the page. You can see this is the first time. And after that, it will come for the second time. After that, it will stop. Now we can keep it. As infinite. Then it will be infinite, continuous. It will be continuous until you close the page. It can be continuously displaying those effects, right? So that is how we can manage, right? So that is the speed, that is the number of times you want to show the animation. You can use an iteration count. This just rest of example is same. Only this part I will give. You can configure this. We can define that, right? So you can even you can control the animation direction. So by using animation direction property, you can control the animation. So by using the animation iteration count, this one above one count. Here I can use animation direction. So direction, we can define alternate directions. For example, you see here, I'm adding here. So animation direction suppose we want to keep some picture and the different directions we want to configure. Let's keep a picture here. So I will keep an image source is, and the image I will define from images. We have speaker.jpg, and here for image width is 100 and height also 100. Okay, we configured the image width and height. Now we can create an effect for this here. That is nothing but because we have an image, so container overflow is hidden, and container height I will give as some 400 pixel. Okay, fine. Now what should happen? Thus slide in from margin left 100%. I will use an option like transform, rotate. I told you we can use all. 180 degrees rotate is the starting position actually. And 2, the ending position, what I will do is here 2. I will keep the margin left to 0, and here transform rotation is 0 degree, is 0 degree. Okay, and for image, so I will give the effect like, so all these options, because it's not heading for image, I will give the option like width as 20% width, and height as 70%, width and height 20 and 70%. And animation name is slide in. Slide in is the animation name. Animation duration is 5 seconds. And animation iteration count is infinite. And animation direction is alternate. We can keep alternate, we can create reverse direction, alternate direction. I defined this, right? Now you can see that effect will be in this way, and it will go alternate from there. Then again it will move out from there. It is coming back here, and here we used only rotate. We haven't used any size, and it is again coming normal. That is how it is displaying the object. You can even control the size. That means it is using an alternate direction for that. Alternate direction. You can use size. That means from, so transform scale as some 3. And here, so we have transform scale as 1, from 3 to 1. So it will be displaying in this way. Now you are using only one option. You can adjust the size here, and we can define the size there. Because you are giving only one option. So if you want, you have to define the multiple options. Rotate and scale both cannot work. For that, you know that we have to use matrix, right? If you give this, it will work only one, either rotate or scale. I showed you a matrix which will keep all those options together. You have to write a matrix for defining all. It depends on, so how you want to write. So what are the effects you want to configure? It will use them. So that's how we can manage. So the animation direction actually. We can use an animation direction, and we can configure an animation direction. This is for animation direction. How the animation direction is controlled. Direction is controlled. And this is how animation iteration count is controlled. Iteration is controlled. Number of times to loop actually. So we can even define the delay time also for effects. You can also configure the delay time. So the delay time for effects. Delay time already we know. So we can apply the delay time also. That means starting how much, ending how much, the delay time. So that means I'm configuring delay time. We can use delay timing function, animation timing function. We can add them. That means what we are doing here is we are adding animation delay as 5 seconds. 5 seconds to start, 5 seconds to end. And the animation timing function, we can use like ease or step. We can also use that. We can also ease. I will give an ease effect. That means the speed will be controlled at the beginning, at the ending by using these predefined effects. So we are configuring all of them. So a combination is defined here. So the combination of all these animation effects are configured there. Now when I run this, so you can see that. So once you configure this, you can see it will get the effect in this way, and it is using ease effect also and start and duration time. You can even handle the options. We can even handle the options to configure. So by using different types of configure by using different types of events also. Those are too early. Actually, events and how do we manage them, we will see in the next level to understand those events also. So we can configure the events. So, but not now. Events are handled later. We can use those events later. So by using the events, we can manage. But they are complex. For that, you need JavaScript options for handling that. That means actually what we do is on button click, we want to control on other selection, it has to control. Then obviously you have to use JavaScript. Only hover, focus, blur like things you can control here. That's fine. But others you cannot manage without JavaScript. So we are not completely eliminating JavaScript actually. We are not completely eliminating JavaScript. We are just making use of more without JavaScript. That's it. That means everything it cannot manage. So for that, we need a little bit combination of JavaScript to handle and work with them. So with that, we can control more. Like on button click, it should start the animation. And on a click of button, it should pause the animation. Again, it should resume the animation. Such things we can manage. But for that, mandatorily, you need JavaScript. How do we configure and work with the JavaScript? Right? Technically, these are the animations, how we can define and work with the animation. So we can add the delay times, we can add the durations, everything we can configure. So with animation. Here the key point is how you are designing the keyframes and using the keyframes in animation. So first, you have to clearly understand that we have to design the keyframes with any name, and the starting, ending, and intermediate options are defined. Starting, ending, intermediate options are defined here by using from, to, and percentage. Starting is from, to is ending, and different percentages we can configure. So that means you can change its position. For example, if I say 50%, at 50%, so the margin left, so margin left, so should be suppose 50%. And the transform, rotate, it should be, so, or transform, I said some scale, so it should be some 2, like this I define. At 50%, I want that here, effect there. So that means here you can see that. So when we define that, At 50%, you want that animation effect to handle. So, and the margin left is 50%. One of the main problem you need is here. You need to check whether that 50% and the margin that 50% you configured is having the same effect. Why? Because that means effect means you should know that its 50% margin is correct or not. Suppose I haven't defined any margin, I'm defining some just only transform, and you see there are no transform because it is completely using the transform of scale and rotate, and you are in between adding the scale option, and it is not having any option for the scale at the initial level. You have to consider all these when you are defining the effect. That means you have to make sure that you are configuring and you are defining the effects. So between, from, and to means the in between ones should be continuing to them. There should not be in between suddenly added with some new things, right? That means already you learned in Flash when you are designing first frame and last frame, when you are configuring first frame and last frame, in between frame should be between the first and last animation only with some different position, but it cannot have a complete effect, different effect, because it should continue from the beginning and end at the ending, and it should be in the continuation order. You cannot give any effect. That already I showed you here. So in our previous example, how we can add intermediate option for that. When we added intermediate option, so we changed that here. We have to continue them, and we need to add some effect. All the options which you defined, they should continue. We can add some additional things at that particular percent. What should happen? We can configure that, and we can define that effect. Simply, you cannot add any new effect there. You can add any number of effects. You can configure and define any number of effects. So that means you can use a lot of effects. Any number of effects means any number of transition timings and all. That means 1 to 100% how you want. So you can configure that. You can define that. So these are all the basic things you need to know while working with the keyframes. So simply whatever you write, so without following the order, it will have an abnormal behavior. It will not give you the correct what you are exactly expecting. So that is how we have to understand and work with the animations. Right. After knowing about how to configure and define the animations, so CSS 2D and 3D animations, now we can go into the concept of working with Bootstrap and CSS. Means how we can work with Bootstrap and CSS. So that means now we are going to understand what is Bootstrap and how do we use and work with Bootstrap in our UI development. Whatever you learned till now, you can make it more simple, more easy, more faster in applying by using this Bootstrap. So that is what Bootstrap is and how Bootstrap actually works. We need to understand this step by step. So that we will continue from tomorrow. Tomorrow we can start working with Bootstrap. How do we set up? How do we install? How do we work with the Bootstrap? In Bootstrap, we can create several layouts and designs that real world needs, and we can do it in a simple and faster way. That will continue in tomorrow's session. Okay, right.